On the ground, GOP Foreign Affairs Chairman Michael McCaul discussed Taiwan's readiness should Communist China try to blockade the country. He is pushing to deliver the weapons already agreed upon to Taiwan as soon as possible. Currently, some 60% of global trade moves through the Taiwan Straits, while 90% of advanced semiconductor manufacturing happens in Taiwan, meaning a potential incursion of the island of Taiwan and a takeover of that semiconductor manufacturing could cripple the United States and the world. After his trip on Thursday, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs sanctioned House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul, saying McCaul, quote, seriously violated the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 joint communiques of China and the U.S. Joining me right now is the man himself, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman, Texas Congressman Michael McCaul. And Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me.
I want to get your take on what you learned while on the ground there. You traveled extensively throughout Taiwan and the surrounding regions. But first, address this issue from China sanctioning you. What exactly does that mean? You are now sanctioned by Communist China.
Yeah, I mean, the Taiwan Relations Act 1979 allows us to visit President Tsai or any heads of state of Taiwan. She visited the United States, and somehow they're all bent out of shape about this. You know, they threatened us by emails prior to entering the island. So what it means basically is I cannot travel to China. I've been banned from any travel, nor can I conduct any business activity in China or work with any individuals from the PRC related to that. You know, but quite frankly, Maria, I view it as a badge of honor. You know, Communist China is getting so aggressive right now, and that was demonstrated by what they did around the island in just the couple of days we were there. We had 10 battleships surrounding the island, an aircraft carrier, and 70 Chinese fighter jets in the air, threatening us and President Tsai the entire time we were in Taiwan.
Well, that's pretty extraordinary. What was the response while you were on the ground? Here you are on this island nation, and you've got 71 Chinese fighter jets, and you've got the 10 battleships, including a large aircraft carrier around you. What did the officials say, or how did they respond to such a bravado act from CCP?
Well, yeah, they briefed me on it in a classified space, said you're surrounded. You know, I saw it more as intimidation rather than a direct threat to me and my personal safety. But it's them showing their bravado to their people. They feel compelled to have to do this anytime, you know, a high-ranking official meets with President Tsai, like Kevin McCarthy did, and myself. We're not going to let that deter us or sway us in any way. We have every right to meet with President Tsai and show our support to stand with Taiwan against this very, in the face of aggression. As you mentioned, weakness invites aggression at the beginning of the show. And this is all I've seen from this administration, is projecting weakness. And when you do that, you invite aggression and war. Now, we saw this after Afghanistan fell. We saw it when Putin invaded Ukraine. And now we're seeing it with Chairman Xi threatening Taiwan and the Pacific Islands.
This is very disturbing. And Congressman, I want to get your take on where all of this weaponry stands, because I know that you had discussions about readiness. Is Taiwan ready for a potential blockade from China? They have already ordered and paid for 22 weapons, at least, that I know of, that are supposed to go to Taiwan. How come they have not received it? And what are you going to do in terms of trying to get more aggressive to get that weaponry to Taiwan?
Well, let me just say first, we started out at Indo-PACOM, our Pacific Command, our commander there, giving us a high-level brief on the threats to the Pacific in the region. We went to Japan, met with the Prime Minister of Japan, went to South Korea, to the DMZ, met with the President of South Korea, and then we ended up in Taiwan. I signed off on 22 weapon systems, Maria, 3 years ago, some as long as 5 years ago, that have yet to go into Taiwan. They've actually paid for these weapons. So when I meet with President Tsai, her first question is, when am I going to get my weapons? And why is that important? Because the weapons provide the deterrence. The deterrence promotes peace and stops conflict. If we have no deterrence, just like Ukraine, if we have no deterrence on the ground in Taiwan, rest assured Chairman Xi will make that calculation. If he can't influence the next Taiwanese presidential election, he will go to Plan B and either do a blockade or a military invasion of the island. So deterrence is absolutely critical.
So are they ready at this point? What can you tell us about the readiness, putting those weaponry aside?
You know, they have a ways to go. They need the weapons that we promised them we would provide them. We need more combat training on the ground. You know, we also talked about Starlink, Maria. You and I talked about ISR, that's intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. China has eyes and ears on the ground everywhere in the Pacific region. We have some, but Taiwan has none. And we talked about the idea, like we did in Ukraine, putting up a Starlink satellite system to give Taiwan eyes and ears on the ground to see into China, to see the threat before it comes so they can stop it from invading the island.
How committed do you think the neighbors in the region will be to support Taiwan if, in fact, we were to see a blockade? I'm talking about the Philippines, Japan, et cetera. You traveled to a number of areas near Taiwan as well. What have you learned?
And that's such a great question. Remember, in the Pacific, they don't have NATO like you have in Europe. They have a loose configuration of partners, if you will. But we have a base in Guam that we visited with the B-52s. We have the 7th Fleet in Japan that we visited. We have operations out of South Korea. And we also have a forward operating base in the Philippines. But the question is a good one, Maria, and that is, in the event of a conflict, would those countries stand by Taiwan if the United States decided to defend Taiwan? And I say that with a big if. I don't know what the American people want to do, but we have to have assurances. We have to start having these conversations now with them that they would allow us to operate out of these bases to provide the deterrence and also, in the event of an invasion, to push back Communist China aggression. Yeah. Because it's not just Taiwan, it's the entire Pacific region at stake.
Yeah. And how about the entire world with 90% of advanced semiconductor manufacturing happening in Taiwan? And tell me about trade going through the Taiwan Straits. I mean, tell us about the impact to America on all of your work.
You know, I talk a lot about freedom and democracy, but, you know, beyond that, you got 60% of international trade going through the Taiwan Straits. 90% of the advanced semiconductor capability, manufacturing capability for the world is in Taiwan. Precisely why Secretary Pompeo, Wilbur Ross, myself, through the CHIPS Act, try to pull that supply chain out of Taiwan into the United States. But the fact is, it's still 90%. Imagine if China invaded tomorrow, Communist China, and either took over and owned TSMC, the chip manufacturer, or broke it. Either way, we would be in a world of hurt, and China would be the most dominating economic and military force on the planet.
Yeah, I want to move on to Ukraine and this Pentagon leak in a minute, but real quick on this ISR, the Starlink system, which would give Taiwan the eyes and ears right in the backyard of China. Do you think you'll be successful in getting that done?
It was a big takeaway from our trip, and President Tsai is very interested in this proposal. And to your point, I would hope the administration would wake up and start getting these weapons in and get them this ISR capability with Starlink. Because to date, as you have said, I see no deterrence coming from this administration. And as you know, going back to Chamberlain and Hitler, weakness always invites aggression and war. I want peace. We'll only achieve that if we can get the weapons in and deterrence. The key here is that President Xi, Chairman Xi, has to calculate the price would be too high to invade and therefore would be deterred from that aggression. But right now, Maria, I don't see it.
Wow. Michael Gallagher told me that he thinks that they're going to invade or do something in 2024. Is that where you are?
Yeah, you know, the intelligence community says 2027.
Okay.
I personally think they're going to try to influence the next election in January, presidential. You already had the former president of Taiwan in China meeting with the PRC about their preferred candidate going into that presidential election in January. If they prevail and influence the election, they win just like Hong Kong without a shot fired. If they don't prevail, then they go to plan B. And I think that would be likely a blockade type scenario where they cut the sea cable, a massive cyber event on the island, and they shut it down and they cut off all food and water for a matter of a month, and then they take it over.
Wow. That is chilling. Real quick, Mr. Chairman, before you go, this leak, this Pentagon leak, one thing that we learned was that there are troops on the ground in Ukraine, according to this leak. You're the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Did you authorize that? Were you supposed to be consulted in terms of sending troops to Ukraine before this administration did so?
No, I didn't authorize that. Without getting into classified at the classified level, it has been publicly stated by John Kirby, and it's been reported that there are essentially 70 or so NATO forces, special operators, 14 American, to provide oversight on the military aid that's going into Ukraine to ensure fidelity that it goes to the right place. So that'd be oversight and accountability for weapons going into Ukraine. Also, when I was in Kyiv at the embassy, they also provide protection to the embassy and visitors, like delegations like my delegation when we went through. They're not in a combat mode there, just simply ensuring accountability and oversight on the weapons going in.
Okay. And I know that you have a briefing on this in your committee on Wednesday. We will be watching that for further information there. Mr. Chairman, good to see you this morning. Thank you, sir. Very important interview. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me.
And to you, Congressman.